Okay, so here's the track as it is. Got those new drums, new drum synth sounds. We've also got that new rhythmic bass line and all the other elements that make up this track. So, although I've been mixing and processing along the way, as I always do, it's now much easier and much more intuitive in the Maschine 2 software to get a nice sort of fat mix and work out exactly what's going on. So I want to have a look at using that to process some of the groups and to get a nice fat banging mix. So let's solo the drums, come back over to this mixer page, and this here really allows you to see what's going on, what's peaking at what particular level, and that's really important to getting a good mix. So I've kind of balanced out the individual drum hits as I'd like them to be. This is kind of working for me quite nicely. So if we come over to the group, we can look at processing the drums as a group, almost like a bus. So what I'd first do, I'd get a high pass and just take some of that bottom end out, because that's where our sub bass is going to sit. That's quite a usual thing to do. So what I would do is I'd start by dialing this in until I can actually hear it thinning the kick drum out. When I hear it thinning the kick drum out, that's gone too far. So probably around about there, you can hear it sort of thinning that kick drum out. So I'm going to bring that back to probably around about 70 Hertz. No resonance, I'm just using it as a low cut filter to give some space for the bass. Alright, so I want to have a look at this Transient Master plugin now. This is a really nice and very usable plugin that allows you to kind of shape your drums, allows you to add more attack or less attack, or allows you to add more sustain, gives it a kind of distorted effect, or again less sustain for that kind of more clicky effect. So I'm going to turn this limiter off, and I'm usually going to just tweak this attack up a touch, not much because it's easy to overdo it, but just flick it up a touch. But what I find with this particular Transient Master is that if you also push the sustain up by about the same amount, so where are we, about 12% on the attack, if we go up about 12% on the sustain as well, it just seems to give it a really, really nice sound. So if we bypass it, there we are, bypassed. And there we are back in. It's very subtle, but it just adds a little bit of presence to the drums. Okay, so I turned this little limiter thing off here, and what that is it's built in, and it's a limiter built in that will limit the changes that these two parameters add. Now I'm going to actually use a compressor to do that myself, just because I like to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is set up a compressor with quite a fast attack time. Let's say 0.1 milliseconds, quite a fast release time as well. About 60 milliseconds maybe. And just pull this down ever so slightly until we're just ticking there. I don't want to compress it too much, but just want to control this attack and sustain that's been added. So if I turn the Transient Master off and maybe set that threshold there, so we're just not really getting anything there, and then when we turn the Transient Master on, we're just flicking it ever so slightly there. Maybe I'll pull this compressor down a touch, just to kind of give it that sort of overall limiting kind of effect. Not too much, never do too much limiting or compressing, as it's really going to kill your drums. Okay, so that sounds pretty good to me. So let's have a look at bringing in that breakbeat. Right, okay, so we've got the little breakbeat which sits on top of our drums. I'm going to use just a little bit of EQ to shape this, and I'm going to open up the EQ on the arrangement page like that, and then that allows me to move it around, and I actually want to go just after the saturator and before the reverb and compressor. I had that all going on before, but I think I just want to EQ these drums a little bit to make them sound a little bit nicer. So I want to do that before the reverb and the compression that we had there previously. So that allows me to move that plugin around. I'm going to go back to this mixer page and then over to this EQ. Okay, so first things first, I'll probably take a little bit of low end out, because these sit over the top of our drums that have loads and loads of bottom end in that kick drum. So I'm going to take a bit out, maybe not 20 dB, that's a bit over the top, probably like 10 dB, something like that. And that's just going to clean it up ever so slightly. And I might add some sparkle up at the top at around about 5k maybe. Something like that. Now, I can hear some kind of really ringy tones in there that I really want to try and EQ out. So if I set quite a tight Q here and boost and sweep around these high mid area, I can hear around there about 850, about 800 hertz. There's a kind of nasty ringy tone in the snare drum. So I'm going to then kill that with this high mid there. Again, not too much, because that might sort of kill the actual drum sound itself. But if we bypass this EQ now, and bring it back in, you can hear that it just sort of tightens up ever so slightly. That's probably too much of a kill, maybe only about 4 dB, but it just kind of takes some of those high mid rings out. And I can sort of hear another one that's probably about an octave lower. So where are we? 820 hertz. So this is probably going to be about 400 hertz. Yeah. Sweep around a bit. Yeah, that's that kind of boxy sort of tone that you're hearing in there. So if I cut that out as well, quite a tight Q on both of them, maybe tighten that Q up a touch, about 4 dB. You can hear that it just cleans that drum up a little bit. That's mainly that snare drum. Although it sounds a little bit thin now, when we actually listen to that in the mix, you can hear that they sound nice and fat with those drums underneath. If I bypass the EQ again, they almost don't stand out as much. But with those high mid and low mid kind of resonant tones killed a little bit, they really start to jump out. Okay, so I've got my drums done, and where I would usually go now is to the bass. Okay, so there's the bass. Sounds good. I feel we could boost some of that low end just to give it some more warmth and real kind of punchy low end. Seeing as we've taken it out of the drums, we've high passed the drums up to about 70 hertz. So if you look here, I'm going to boost at about 62 hertz, and I'm going to keep going probably about there, probably quite a lot, 6.4 dB, and that's just really adding a nice bit of warmth extra sort of low end there. If I bypass it, it's that kind of real low sub bass. I also want to kill a kind of really resonant sort of low mid kind of tone that's kind of, I think, taking up a bit too much space in the mix. So I'm going to set up a tight Q again. It sounds to me like it's around about 200 Hertz, something like that. So I'll set the cutoff at about 200 Hertz. Give it a bit of a boost, see if I can find this little peak. All right. Yeah. Okay, so I can hear that that's really kind of too much low mids there. So let's knock that back probably quite a bit, maybe 4 or 5 dB. So that, along with this low end boost, has kind of really solidified this sub bass, giving it much more kind of weight and impact. This low mid here for me was taking up too much room in the whole mix, and also the bass itself wasn't heavy enough, it was a bit too lightweight. So let's have a listen before and back in. Okay, so that's basically our 3 main parts of the track mixed. I'm going to mute the bass. Let's have a listen to the drums and that break on top. And what I would do is always mix from here, so get my drums sounding how I wanted them to sound. I've got a little bit of bus compression going on them, and so they're all nice and kind of solid and uniform. And now I'd look over here at our master fader, and we've got a little readout here at where we're peaking. And at the moment, our drums are peaking at about -5.8. Now that's perfect. That's got to give us basically 6 dB headroom on top of the drums. You shouldn't really need much more than that with this type of track. When I bring the bass in, I'm looking for around about 2 dB change there. So we're -5.8, so somewhere around -3.8 when the bass comes in. And we know we've got quite a loud mix, because therefore there's not that much change in overall level. Okay, so that's peaking now at about 4.8. And that sounds all right to me. I think we could probably squeeze a touch more out. Something like that. I mean, I don't want to push it too much, but that sounds pretty good to my ears, and we've not got a massive change over here. Drums are 5.8, bass comes in. That's about a 1 dB, 1.5 dB change. That's perfect, that's excellent. That's going to result, hopefully, in a really loud and punchy mix. So that is the break, the beats, the bass sub, all mixed and kind of sounding pretty balanced to me. Let's bring in some of these top end basses now and see where we get with those.